Let's make sure I hit record. Hey, I'm Sarah Forde, an actor, holistic nutritionist, and regular human being living in Venice Beach, California. Today, I want to share about my journey being diagnosed with and learning to manage my postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or my POTS. If you're watching this video, chances are you've been diagnosed with POTS, or someone you love and care about has been diagnosed with POTS. If you don't know what POTS is, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome is a syndrome. Syndromes are groups of symptoms often found together in the same demographic of people, and doctors name these syndromes so that they have a way to easily reference them. With POTS, we kind of know what's going on. We know that a lot of people diagnosed with the POTS syndrome have a lot of similar symptoms. Things like their blood is not pumped efficiently through their body. Instead, it tends to pool in their extremities, meaning their hands and their feet. Their hands and feet can swell as a result. They can also have heat intolerance. They can feel cold very easily because they don't have that great circulation. The tricky thing with a syndrome is it's hard to treat because the root cause of the problem is sort of elusive. It's hard for doctors to tell you exactly what you should do to find relief. Instead, people with POTS are told a lot of vague instructions, like exercise more, drink more water, don't be so stressed. Those are the things that my doctor told me. If you have POTS, or you know someone who has POTS, you know how debilitating this syndrome can be. When you first come down with symptoms, it can feel like your whole life is being stolen from you, because all of a sudden you have so many limitations that you didn't have before. For me, as an athlete, I found it nearly impossible to compete and do one of the things that I loved and found a lot of joy and fulfillment in. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, we're seeing a great increase in the incidence of POTS. I'm not sure what the connection is there. I just know that this is being reported on. And I can imagine that for people who are trying to hold down a job, who have a family, kids who rely on them, getting a POTS diagnosis can feel really frustrating. I was diagnosed with POTS when I was about 13 years old. So I had the support of my parents and the support of my doctors and my teachers and my coaches. Everybody kind of rallied around me. There weren't too many people depending on me. I was actually kind of depending on a lot of people. So in a way, I was blessed to be diagnosed as a kid. That being said, it was not easy. So next, I want to get a little bit into my journey of how I even figured out that I had POTS, what my symptoms were, and then what I finally did to get it managed so that I could live the life that I wanted to live. I distinctly remember the first day that I really experienced POTS. And by really experienced POTS, I mean there was no denying that something had changed in my body and I needed to address it. Up until this day, I do believe I was struggling with POTS symptoms. They just hadn't reached a level that made me concerned enough to see my doctor. Then, one day, I went to the dentist. And the dentist appointment was fine. My mom took me because I was too young to drive. She picked me up from school. We went to the dentist, and at the end of my appointment, they brought me back up in the chair. As soon as I get up from the chair, I'm like, oh, whoa. And my vision started to go out. So my normal vision started to have these orbs of light, like purple and green, kind of like you're not supposed to look at the sun, but if you look at the sun and then you look at a blank wall or something, you'll see these orbs of light and your eyes are kind of adjusting. I was having that experience, but I was in a room without windows. Like I wasn't looking at the sun. Maybe I was looking at a bright light. I don't know. But what happened next told me that it was not normal. I saw the orbs of light, and then I started to see the room almost pixelate, like black and white, in and out vision, like pixelation. I could see some things, not everything. It was just very disorienting. And I somehow found my way to the waiting room, got to my mom. I was internally panicking because I was young. I didn't know what was happening. I thought I was going blind. So I got to my mom and I started doing that annoying kid thing where you pull on her sweater, and I was like, Mom. And she was like, Sarah, can you just give me a second? I gotta check out. And the secretary, was helping my mom pay the bill or whatever. Like, Mom, no, Mom. And so then the secretary and my mom are like, okay, what's wrong? And I start to say, I think I'm going blind. And they rushed me back into the room where the dentist had seen me. They put me in the chair and they're like, okay, just breathe. It's going to be okay. The secretary got me a Coca-Cola from the fridge, had me drink that, and within mere seconds, I was okay again. So then we thought it was maybe like a blood sugar issue. The secretary said, hey, why don't you get her an ice cream cone? It seems like her blood sugar's low, and just send her back to school. She'll be fine. But I wasn't fine. I kept having this experience multiple times a day after that day. It was happening consistently in the same way, where I would start to lose my vision and then everything would go black and I would feel like I was going to pass out. Sometimes I did pass out. So we saw the pediatrician, of course, and she said, okay, it could be an electrolyte deficiency because my diet was great. You know, my mom told her, you know, she eats like this, and I ate a lot of food because I was an athlete, and I was also one of those high metabolism teenagers, very tall and gawky, skinny, so I needed to try to get some more meat on my bones. So I was eating all kinds of stuff. My diet was not clean, but I definitely was eating a lot of food. We started to look at an electrolyte imbalance, something of that nature. My pediatrician recommended that I drink tons of Powerade, eat a lot of bananas. She thought maybe it was a potassium deficiency. So for a period of time, I was drinking so much Powerade and eating so many bananas that the taste of both of those things to this day kind of grosses me out. Unfortunately, that didn't work. It didn't do the trick, and I was back to ground zero trying to figure this out. To make matters worse, I also developed SVT, supraventricular tachycardia syndrome. This syndrome caused this strange racing heart sensation in my body when adrenaline hit. I didn't know that at first. I just knew that I had it pretty regularly when I was competing in sports. A good example would be in a cross-country race. You get to the starting line, it's this big open field, and all these runners are standing around you, and there's a guy out, 500 meters ahead of you, pretty far away, and he shoots a gun into the air. And when he shoots the gun, it's time to run. As soon as the gun would go off, my heart would go off. And it would go 300 to 350 beats per minute. And I wouldn't be able to compete. It'd be a non-starter for me. We knew we needed to see a cardiologist, and we did. My pediatrician referred us to the Cleveland Clinic. We saw a great cardiologist. He ran a bunch of tests to see if I had any sort of genetic issue, something more life-threatening and fatal. All of that came back clear, so that was a blessing. However, we had no answers. We still didn't know what was going on. We did a stress test where I had a Holter monitor and I was running on a treadmill. But of course, the moment I needed my heart to do the racing thing, it decided it didn't want to. It was like the singing frog. It just didn't want to perform. Then the cardiologist gave me a Holter monitor. And a Holter monitor is a device that you wear for 30 days, maybe longer, depends on your doctor, what they want to do. I wore mine for 30 days and I had to wear it 24/7, so I always had it on me. Holter monitors today are pretty discreet. I did have to wear one 2 years ago, and I got through a whole modeling shoot and you didn't even know it was there, so they've definitely improved. At the time, no. No. It was more like an ECG, meaning there was all these stickers on my chest and then these wires that hooked up to the stickers, and then those wires fed down my shirt to this device on my belt. Pretty large device. And that device had a button on it, so if my heart started to race, I would press the button and it would record into this machine so that my doctor could then listen to it and figure out what was going on. Wearing this device in high school is a special experience. Every time I pushed the button, it would make this sound like AOL, like when you're signing on to AOL, it would be like that sound. I covered my little belt piece, the recording device, with cutouts from Teen Vogue. I went through Teen Vogue and I found all these cool cutouts. I don't know, in the magazine I made a little collage on the device. It was a very avant-garde fashion statement. I don't think my classmates appreciated it. The point is, my cardiologist did get some good recordings and immediately diagnosed me with SVT. He then told me that I needed to get a heart ablation. Okay, what is that? It's a pretty non-invasive heart procedure. They cut a little slit in your thigh. They feed up these wires to your heart. One wire is a little camera. One is a little like ink dispenser, and one is a burner. So the ink dispenser does this weird thing where it puts this ink in that allows the doctor to see on, I think it's like an x-ray machine. Guys, I'm not a doctor. I'm just telling you what I remember because I was awake for the whole thing. So it would like put this ink in so that they could see with the camera the nodes on the heart that they needed to burn away. It was pretty cool. I felt like my doctor was playing a video game inside my body. Yeah. And I was supposed to be asleep for it. They gave me anesthesia, but my brother had just had his wisdom teeth out like a week before. And he told me, he said, when they give you the anesthesia, try to stay awake, because if you try to stay awake, eventually the room will like spin out and go black. So I was just laying there like staring at the ceiling like, I'm not gonna fall asleep, I'm gonna watch the room spin out. And it never did. I was just awake the whole time. And redheads, you have to be very careful with anesthesia, which I was like 13. I didn't know any of this. So the doctors didn't want to give me any more, thank God, because it wasn't working. They didn't know my little plan. Like, this could have been a disaster, but I digress. It was not. And I got to talk to my doctor through the whole thing, and he told me it was the first time he ever had a patient awake who was asking him questions. Fun. And then I was fine. I believe I had one night in the hospital to recover, or maybe it was just a couple hours. My memory is foggy. I just remember it being really, really, really painful when they had to reteach me to walk, as I put it. One of the most painful experiences of my life was the couple steps they made me take with a walker at the end of my procedure. But then I was fine. It didn't last. It was like 3 steps and then I was like, okay, I'm good. I went back to running cross country and never had another issue with the heart racing. They say that you can come down with SVT again, but what can you do? Unfortunately, even though I didn't have the heart racing anymore, I was still passing out and having a ton of POTS and symptoms. So I still found myself getting really lightheaded when I stood up. I also had a lot of issues with fatigue. I started to develop an IBS issue. I definitely had the heat intolerance and the constant cold feeling in my body. Like I was always shivering. I couldn't get warm. I had a lot of things going on. And it was making puberty very difficult. Puberty's already very difficult, but it made it even more confusing. It took about 3 years to get my full POTS diagnosis, which is kind of crazy. We moved to Columbus, Ohio around this time from Cleveland, where I went to the Cleveland Clinic. We moved to Columbus. I saw a new doctor. He did a tilt table test, and the tilt table test is the test for POTS. If you don't know what the tilt table test is, it's when they lay you on a medical bed. They tilt the medical bed up using a machine, so the bed goes from horizontal to vertical. So you go from lying down to standing up. If your heart rate jumps a certain level, they diagnose you with POTS. So this cardiologist actually thought, oh, there's a syndrome, a condition called POTS. Let's see if you have it. It sounds like what you're going through, and a lot of females get it when they're going through puberty. We don't know why. So I do the tilt table test, and it comes back positive. So I got my diagnosis, and the doctor said, unfortunately, there's not too much I can do to help you with this. However, you should take salt pills, because salt pills will help with the circulation issue. You won't pass out as much. And there's some steroids that we could give you if you want to go that route. I didn't want to go that route, so I took the salt pills multiple times a day, every day, for a while, maybe 5 years. At this time, I worked at the mall in Columbus. I worked at American Eagle. I would work the floor, meaning that I would chat with customers. I would fold all the shirts on the tables. Every so often, being in that standing position too long would make me start to black out and pass out. So I started going to the food court. Before my shift started, I would take a handful of those tiny little salt packets from the food court vendor. I'd put them in my American Eagle jeans, and then during my shift, anytime I started to feel like I might pass out, I would just rip one of those guys open, down the salt like a shot, and get on with my shift, which is as disgusting as it sounds. If I tried to do this today, I would throw up. But I was desperate. I needed a way to get through my days, get through school, get through my job, and move forward with my life. I had such big dreams and ambitions for my life. I didn't even really know what they were. I just knew that I wanted to be very, very present and alive. I wanted to be alive. Fast forward to college. I wanted to go to college, even though at this point I was going in and out of periods of being completely bedridden. I had to work with my high school to get permission to do a lot of work from home, to go into school later in the day. Just a lot of special arrangements had to be made on my behalf, which I hated. I hated that kind of attention. It was so embarrassing. But what can you do? And I continued to see my cardiologist. I just tried to figure this out, and I wasn't getting anywhere. We were looking into special clinics all over the world, trying to figure out if there was somewhere I could go to get this taken care of, and we just weren't coming up with much. So I decided to go to college in my hometown. This way, I was close to my doctor, I was close to my family. I felt confident that I could get through school with my POTS condition. It was really challenging, but I did get through school. I actually graduated a semester early while I was fighting cancer. I don't know how. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, man, it would be nice to have my youth back. Even though I was chronically ill, I was youthful and I was just getting stuff done. On that note, I decided to study psychology and English. English because I loved to read and I loved to write, and psychology because I was really interested in becoming a doctor. I really wanted a career that would allow me to help girls, or just people in general, in my situation, to help people who are chronically ill and maybe move medicine forward in that area. However, I didn't think I could be a doctor if being on my feet for more than an hour made me pass out. It would be difficult, to say the least. I decided to study psychology because I thought, okay, this is another way that I can help people in my situation. Because having a chronic illness is not the easiest thing to deal with mentally and emotionally. It can really bring you down if you let it. And it's very easy to let it. Psychology ended up being the perfect major for me. I was so into it right away. I loved how it fused philosophy and more of like a hard biological science, because those were kind of my favorite things in high school. And I thought that I would become a psychologist specifically for people dealing with chronic illness. But then life hit me with another big left turn, and I found nutrition. The first thing that I did to control my POTS was change up my diet. Because I was naturally thin, I didn't think that nutrition was for me. I was 5'10" as like a 13-year-old, so it was kind of hard for my body to keep up with the constant stretching going on. As a result, I ate whatever I wanted. I would eat tons of pizza, like frozen pizzas, ice cream, candy, chocolate, ices, macaroni and cheese, SpaghettiOs. All I ever saw in regard to nutrition was ads for Jenny Craig or ads for Weight Watchers. These things that were targeted to people who struggled with being overweight. So nutrition, that's not for me. Once I figured out that every single person needs to care about their nutrition and what they're putting into their body, my life changed. Spoiler alert, I fell in love with nutrition even more than I fell in love with psychology. But psychology is what led me to nutrition, because I was in a psychology class that talked about how psychology, your brain, your mental health, was related to your diet. And there were these newer studies coming out about the Mediterranean diet that I was reading, and how the Mediterranean diet was lowering rates of depression. And I just thought, doesn't that make sense? Doesn't that just make sense? You learn in psychology that these different oral medications can help manage your mental illness. So, for example, Lexapro can help you manage your anxiety or your depression. And what do you do with Lexapro? It's a pill that you put on your tongue, and then you drink some water, and it goes down into your digestive system, and it's absorbed into your body. So, if Lexapro could impact my mental health for the better, why couldn't my food or drinks that followed the same pathway? Yeah, a light bulb went off. I realized that food definitely is affecting my biology, my anatomy, and not just mentally, physically too. And why were my doctors never talking to me about this? They knew that I was eating food, like junk food, but nobody had ever talked to me about this. So I talked to myself about it. I started to look at what I was eating and I just started kicking out anything that didn't seem nutritious. If it didn't seem like it was going to help me, I stopped eating it. My addiction to Coca-Cola that the dentist got me hooked on because it was one of the ways that I managed my POTS. There was a time when I would drink probably 5 colas, Dr. Pepper, Sprite, what have you, every single day just to get through my homework. I kicked that out. All of these things out. And then I enrolled in holistic nutrition school. I am now a holistic nutritionist. I studied at Bowman College, which is a school based in Berkeley, California, or Boulder, Colorado. They had campuses in both cities at the time. I did the school online as I was finishing college, and I did it just to help myself. I thought I will apply what I'm learning to myself and make myself a guinea pig. I mean, this is a pretty low stakes experiment. Eating more broccoli, eating less ice cream. Or is anyone worried about that? There was more to it, of course, but it was essentially just cleaning up my diet. Within 12 weeks, all of my symptoms disappeared. I had so much energy, my skin cleared up, my IBS disappeared. Everything just started to feel really, really good. And then I got diagnosed with cancer, which is a whole nother story. I was diagnosed with this because I went to see a doctor to just talk about the lingering symptoms I had left over. A lot of it had to do with my menstrual cycle, so I saw a gynecologist. I explained the situation to her, asked her for a specific medicine, and she said, let's test your thyroid. And I said, what's a thyroid? I literally said that. I did not know. And she explained what the thyroid was, said that she needed to test my levels. She tested my levels. They looked normal. But then she checked out my neck, and she found this lump. And people had told me about this lump before. This lump was not news to me. I thought it was an Adam's apple. I thought I was like the only girl on the planet with a very noticeable Adam's apple. It was a tumor. She ordered an ultrasound. They did the ultrasound. It looked weird. They sent me for a biopsy. On my 21st birthday, I received my cancer diagnosis. Yeah. I knew that nutrition was, if not the answer, part of my answer. And I doubled down on that. For a year, I cut out all forms of sugar. There were some studies that I found that connected sugar to cancer, so no sugar, none, done. So no fruit, no refined carbohydrates or whole grains even. The only whole grains I would allow were buckwheat and quinoa. No rice, no oats, no pretzels, no breads, none of that stuff. I would eat half a potato a day, so trying to really restrict the amount of starches in my diets. No legumes because they were so high in carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are immediately converted to sugar or glucose in your body. And I was really trying to just limit my glucose levels, limit the amount of sugars going into my body. So what was I eating? I was eating tons of lean, organically raised, ethically raised proteins, chicken, turkey, grass-fed beef, ethically sourced seafood, wild-caught seafood, and a lot of healthy fats, olive oil, avocados, nuts and seeds, nut butters like almond butter, etc., and vegetables. Today, we tend to call this the keto diet. At the time, keto was not a word that anybody I knew was saying. If you want to do keto, do keto. It's easy these days. There's restaurants that have keto items on the menu, at least in Los Angeles, imagine that. And you can go to the grocery store at Whole Foods and you can see ketogenic desserts that are brownies that are ketogenic. It's crazy. That stuff did not exist when I was doing this. I had to cook everything myself. I was going to very niche health blogs to get recipes, like very niche, just so that I could have something that tasted somewhat similar to a dessert that I craved. And when I gave up sugar, I went through withdrawals. Like, withdrawals. Real withdrawals. There were days at the beginning of this sugar cleanse where it felt like bugs were crawling under my skin. I kid you not. I was scratching myself. It was the creepiest feeling ever. It's like I was living in a horror movie. Luckily, that went away after 2 or 3 days. I also had crying spells, just crying out of nowhere for no reason. It was very strange. And I did this for a year, and I never felt better. From there, it was pretty smooth sailing. I graduated from college. I decided that I wanted to run my own nutrition business because I had been blogging on Instagram and on my website at the time about my journey, about my health journey. And I had people who wanted to work with me. So I started to run these groups in Columbus where we would do like meal plans and we would meet once a week to talk about our progress. And then I moved it online and I had clients all over the globe. And these were often girls with similar issues to me, whether it was a thyroid issue or the POTS issue. I did that for a few years, and I moved to Seattle, Washington, because I always wanted to live on the ocean, on the West Coast. And I moved in with a family who hired me as a live-in nanny. So I was running my business during the day, taking the kids to school in the morning, picking them up in the afternoon. The hours in between were mine to run my business. Then I connected with a genetics startup that wanted to do health coaching based on your genetics to prevent disease progression, so to make sure that you received any diagnoses like cancer before they reached a advanced stage and it became too hard to treat. So that was the mission of the company. I connected with them and was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I want to do with my life. Joined forces with them, had to shut down my business because it would be a compete. Did that for a year. The company lost funding and I moved to Los Angeles. Now I live in Los Angeles. I continue to manage my POTS. I manage my thyroid through medication. We surgically removed my thyroid. I need to take hormones. My body can't produce them anymore. It doesn't have the machine that produces hormones anymore. So I take my thyroid medicine and I'm doing pretty good, guys. I'm doing okay. So if you're wondering what I eat today to manage my POTS, that's a little bit more manageable. I have a whole video on what I eat in a day. Generally, I buy at the grocery store things like eggs, full-fat yogurt, almond milk, spinach. We get a co-op farm box. We get local produce from local organic California farms. That's delivered every other week, and it comes with all kinds of things like kale and carrots that taste like candy. They're so sweet. And tons of other, like lettuce, tons of other things. And still a lot of protein. We usually have burgers on the weekend with 100% grass-fed beef or bison or lamb, whatever. Honestly, whatever's on sale at the grocery store, whatever looks the best. Eat a lot of chicken, a lot of seafood, and we're trying to incorporate a lot of beans as well. And I make us dessert. There's a gluten-free cookie recipe by the New York Times that I make all the time. I love it. It's almond flour, butter, coconut sugar, and chocolate chips. I think that's it. I make it all the time. So if I'm missing, an egg, and some baking soda and salt. And I make it all the time, so I know the recipe by heart now. If you're interested in changing your nutrition, I challenge you to do it for 12 weeks. Start with 12 weeks, roughly 3 months, and stick to a plan. Pick out a plan that makes sense for you. You can do the plan that I did. You can kind of customize one for yourself and stick to it for 12 weeks. Do not cheat. I know cheat days are really fun and nice, and a lot of people recommend them. I do not. Because one, when you really want to make changes in your body, it's important to be consistent. It's also important to show up for yourself. So cheating on yourself, I don't know, it's not a great vibe. It's not a great energy. I don't like that. Once you cheat, it's very easy to make little cheats the rest of the 12 weeks. So if you say every Sunday, I'm going to let myself have pizza, and it's not going to be ketogenic pizza or whatever. I'm just going to have Papa John's pizza every Sunday. It's very easy on Monday to be like, well, there's leftover pizza, so I'll just have pizza for breakfast. And then on Wednesday, you're at work and somebody's like, we should go out for pizza. And you're like, well, like, pizza's my cheat. So, okay, I'll go out for pizza. And soon you're eating pizza all the time. You're no longer following the diet. And other things will sneak in as well. So if you stay consistent all the time and you just tell yourself no, one, you will be amazed at the end of this 12 weeks at how high your self-discipline is. High enough that you can incorporate something like working out. And two, you're going to start feeling a lot better much sooner. If you cheat on yourself, you cheat on your progress, and you also make it much easier to disappoint yourself. And disappointing yourself, it sucks. We've all been there. It sucks. So give it 12 weeks. Leave a comment down below if you do this. Let me know how you feel at the end. I believe in you. You got this. Tip number 2 is exercise. Exercise was a huge one for me. Yes, I was a former athlete, and POTS and SVT and cancer, these things kept me from competing, which took away a lot of my joy as a teenager and a lot of my personal sense of fulfillment. I am definitely the kind of person who needs to have goals and needs to have things that she's accomplishing every day. So when, for example, cross country was taken away from me, I no longer felt like I could go to practice every day after school and accomplish a really nice run, like hit a PR or just feel like I did a really good workout. I no longer had that, and that was really tough for me. So as soon as the nutrition changes started to pay off, I hit the gym. I got a membership at the YMCA, and I went 5 or 6 days a week, pretty consistently. I started on the recumbent bike, which is a bike that is in this like decline position. So your head is more level with your heart, not exactly level, but it's closer. Rather than being like this on a spin bike, you're more like this. So you could put on, your favorite show, or you could read your textbook if you had homework and just bike. And you could bike for like an hour. It's not too vigorous of an exercise. You get to control the resistance. So it's completely your workout. I coupled that with bench presses, bicep curls. It was not benching. I can't even bench to this day. Which helped me balance out the muscle I was building in my legs with the muscle I was building in my arms. And the idea was that this would help me flow the blood back to my heart. So rather than pooling in my extremities like my hands and my feet, the blood would travel back to my heart. And the idea was that this would help combat the POTS and improve my circulation overall. I did this until I felt sturdy enough to move on to things like the Stairmaster, the treadmill. There was a machine at this particular YMCA that I had never seen before and have never seen since, actually, called Jacob's Ladder, which is a ladder it's tilted like this, maybe a 45-degree angle, and you climb it. So it's kind of like Stairmaster, where the ladder just keeps coming back, so there's always a new rung to climb. And I liked it because Stairmaster, you're completely vertical. On this, you're leaned forward. So if you ever did get dizzy, you're falling forward and you're not too far from the ground, and the machine will catch you. I can't really describe it, but maybe I can include a picture of the Jacob's Ladder in this video so you know what I'm talking about. And I would do the Jacob's Ladder for like an hour. It was great. And then eventually I moved into things like squatting and calf races and lunges. Eventually, this was such a great day, I hit the point where I thought that I could do a jump squat. And if you have POTS, you know how hard jumping is. It is probably my biggest trigger, or was my biggest trigger. And I got to the point where I thought I could do them. I tried my first jump squat, and it was a success. I didn't black out. I didn't pass out. I didn't feel dizzy. I felt strong. And as soon as I hit the ground and stood back up, it was just like a Rocky moment. I can remember exactly where I was in this gym. I was in the middle of a basketball court at the YMCA. And I remember some people looking at me like, what is this girl's deal? She did like one jump squat and she looks like she's having the best day of her life. But I wasn't going to hide it. I did a little happy dance. I still remember the song I was listening to. It was great. So I did like 10 more. Did a whole set. No problems. And so I worked that into my workout. It wasn't long before I could start running again. And that was a gift from myself to myself. And whenever you can give yourself a gift from yourself to yourself, do it, because it just feels really good. And people, especially right now, like to talk about self-love. Like, you should love yourself more. Yeah, how do you do that? Well, start showing up for yourself. Don't cheat on yourself, and give yourself gifts from yourself to yourself. And trust me, you won't have to worry about self-love. It will be there. It will be potent. Once I could start running, I decided I wanted to train for a half marathon. This is also the time that I moved across the country. So big changes for Sarah Forde. If you're feeling stuck with POTS and you feel like you can't do the workouts that you used to enjoy, or you feel like you can't go on the walks that you used to enjoy, or even just climbing the stairs is exhausting, I challenge you to start with bicep curls, because you can do them from bed. So if you're bedridden, get some 2-pound weights, 1 pound, doesn't matter, whatever, or just some canned goods, anything that's a little bit heavy, and just start doing bicep curls. You can also do I think this is a tricep extension. I don't know, we do these in my workout classes. Is this a move? You can also just hold the weights out. That's really hard for me because my arms are my wingspan is insane. You can go like this. The idea is that you're building some muscle. If you can get onto a recumbent bike, do it. If you can't, there are plenty of moves you can do from a lying down position, like Pilates moves. All of these things are completely available to you, and you can keep your head and your heart at the same level so that you don't don't feel that lightheadedness. So this is where I would start. I would do a lot of these Pilates workouts and a lot of weightlifting. Again, am I doing this correctly? Once you feel like you're starting to build muscle and you're making the nutrition changes and you're feeling a bit stronger, I would challenge you to start going for walks. Bring your phone with you, or even better, bring a friend with you, so that if something does happen, you can get in contact with someone. I did hear that the new Apple Watches have some sort of alarm feature, so you could also have that and press the alarm feature. I don't honestly know what that alarm feature does, but I'm guessing it sets off an alarm to let people know that you're in danger. And then you could start doing whatever it is you like doing, soccer, basketball. Listen to your body and do what you can. See what happens. Baby steps are great. Baby steps are the best kind of steps. You can take a lot of baby steps very quickly, and they add up to giant steps. Okay, my last tip. I feel like this tip is kind of obvious because I've sort of hit on it several times already, but we're gonna spell it out. Manage your mental health. Oh, let's just take a breath. That's managing your mental health. The one part of my journey with my health, POTS included, that I didn't touch on yet is my mental health. It's not always great, and it has not been easy for me or the people that I love. To be frank, it's been very hard at times. When you're chronically ill, it feels like your body is out to get you. And we talked about self-love before. That feels like the opposite of self-love. That feels like self-hate. That feels like this part of yourself, your physical body, hates you. And what do you do with that? It's hard. It's hard to feel all of this ambition and have these dreams and want to do these things in your life and have the motivation to do them and the drive, but be physically limited. Like, the only thing holding you back from doing these things that you think are amazing is your physical body. It's hard. It's a hard feeling. It's frustrating. It's disappointing, especially when everyone around you seems to be fine. And I know that my physical limitations are minor compared to many other people, but that also made it kind of difficult because a lot of my friends didn't take my condition seriously. For one thing, they couldn't see it. It wasn't a visible physical limitation. So they would look at me and think, you're fine, you're healthy, stop being dramatic. And that's not their fault. They just didn't know. The other thing is, I would have good periods and bad periods. So if I was in a good period, I didn't even think I was sick. I thought I was fine. I was just fine. It was all in my head. That didn't happen. Whatever, that's old news. It's over. And then I would have another bad spell and I would spiral because I thought it was over and it's not, it's back. And that made friendships tricky. I had some great friends. One of my best friends, her mom was a nurse and she had a cousin who also had POTS. So she looked out for me more than I looked out for myself. She is an angel. But a lot of my other friends were just teenagers who didn't understand and thought I was flaky, didn't like them, that I lied, that I was dramatic. Friendships in middle school and high school are already difficult. You add in a chronic illness and it's just like the whole thing blows up. If you're struggling with friendships, I understand. Not everyone is going to understand your condition and support you the way you want to be supported. It's up to you to decide if that person still is allowed to hold space in your life. And there's no right or wrong answer here. In my book, it's completely up to you. If someone doesn't respect your boundaries and doesn't respect your health needs or doesn't even bother to figure out what those things are, you get to choose whether or not that's someone you want in your life. I promise you there are people who will care and will come along beside you. I have met many of them. I've also met tons of people who won't, but I have met many people who will walk alongside me and make sure that I'm supported and I'm okay. So don't give up. Having a lot of drama in my interpersonal relationships was mentally taxing, to say the least. So I spent a lot of time at home, And this could have been very depressing. However, I turned to books and movies to get through. My mom is amazing, not was and is actually amazing. And she and I started this tradition of watching all of the Oscar movies together. So every year we would watch every movie that was up for any of the Oscars, and we'd see as many as we could in theaters, and we would rent the rest, and then we'd watch the Oscars together. And it exposed me to a lot of movies that I wouldn't otherwise seek out at that age. I started to internalize these stories where these characters would overcome all the obstacles thrown their way and reach their destiny. And it made me feel like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. Like, what am I so upset about? This is nothing. I can beat this. I will beat this. This is not going to stop me. And the same goes for books. Books and movies were my escape, and they were my main source of motivation. My parents also brought me to church every Sunday, and that was huge for me too. I was in the church youth group. I had some really nice friends through the youth group who understood my situation and were really kind to me. They looked out for me. They were good people. I have so many memories of that age and those people taking care of me. And that is beautiful because it taught me what true friendship is. It taught me what being a Christian meant. It taught me how to look out for others. Even when you are in need of being looked out for, you should still look out for others. I was able to do that through different church trips that we would go on. We went to Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina, and we rebuilt people's homes and brought people food. Being able to give back to others when I could have been very focused on myself was huge for me. Huge. And that would lead me into my next little segue in this mental health segment, which is don't focus too much on yourself and your condition. The more attention you give it, the more it will start to take over. Today, I don't refer to myself as someone with POTS. I don't refer to POTS as a condition or a syndrome that I have, because it's just a label. It's just a label for a group of symptoms. I would much rather say, sometimes I feel dizzy. I'm a person who sometimes feels dizzy, than to say I'm a person who has POTS. Because the labels that you put on yourself, they change how the world sees you, but more importantly, they change how you see you. And how you see you is very important. And the things that I do believe about myself, I am a fighter, I am ambitious, I am driven, I am a friend, I am a helper, I am generous, I am kind. These are the things that I remind myself every day. These are the things that actually create and define who I am. These other things, they are not labels that I need to wear. And I don't wear them. I don't put them on in the morning. If you're struggling with the mental health components of a chronic illness, like POTS, I really challenge you to pay attention to the words that you use to describe yourself, to others and to yourself. If you describe yourself as weak, as vulnerable, as in need of help, you're going to feel that way. But if you describe yourself as strong, as ambitious, as driven, you're going to feel that way. And those are the feelings you need to propel yourself into action to start to feel better. If you feel weak and you try to change your diet, every time you see that piece of pizza, you're going to be like, I'm a weak person, I'm going to eat this. But if you see that pizza and you tell yourself, I'm a strong person, you're going to see it and go, and grab something else. It seems silly, but these are huge, huge shifts that make all of the difference. The final thing I'll say on mental health is learn to express yourself. Even if you're having a day where you don't feel well enough to be as active as you'd like to be, you can activate your brain. Your imagination is a gift. learn how to write, learn how to paint, find a craft project, find something that you love that you can do from a seated position and just love the heck out of it. You may even find that on good days, you want to sit down and do your hobby. This is what I found personally with movies and books. I started writing when I was working at the genetics company. Every night I'd come home and I would just write. I'd write stories. Then I moved to Los Angeles, and my first weekend here, I met an actor who invited me to a film party. I bought a couch on Craigslist from this actor. He invited me to a film party, and I was offered my first acting job that night. And I fell in love with acting. I fell in love with making movies. And so then I dove into screenwriting and filmmaking and producing my own short films. And I love it. I love to collaborate with these artists in Los Angeles and bring someone's story in their head to life on the screen so that other people like me can watch it and hear whatever message they want to share with the world. It's beautiful. So that hobby of mine turned into potentially a career. I mean, I'm still working at it, but it is something that I do professionally for hire, which is pretty cool. There's always something interesting, always something joyful that you can be doing, and it's vitally important that you don't focus on the negatives, that you focus on these positive things and watch them grow. Baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. They will lead to giant steps. Oh man, this was a much longer video than I intended. It's hard to imagine somebody wanting to just sit and watch me talk for however long this was, 40 minutes, I don't know. But if you made it to the end, thank you. I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you found it encouraging, and I hope you are walking away with some new tips and ideas for how to manage your POTS. I know that POTS is a really hard condition to live with, but you are not alone, and you can still live the life that you want to live. It may be slightly different, but that's just life. I don't think that's POTS. I think that's just being a human. This is a new channel, so if you like this video, definitely leave me a comment. Let me know what you liked about it and what you'd like to see in the future. I have a couple other videos you can check out on my channel. I talk about things like nutrition, being an actor, living in Los Angeles. I just try to keep things real. I try to show you my life with some humor, but mostly reality. Yeah. I wish you the absolute best on your health journey, and I hope that it teaches you so much about yourself, so much about your resilience and your drive and your power, and I can't wait to see where you go from here. It's gonna be beautiful.